Have the right list. The food, correct? Okay, double checking. Because I have the list and I was like, I think this is the right one. I think because I pulled it from the April class. That's why it's the same similar list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the exact. I don't think we changed food
Right.
that much.
I
And
don't think
yeah, it
so.
was food because I did say everybody should have a snack. I remember
Yes.
you said that. Yeah.
That's why I was like, I'm gonna double check before I go ahead and get started. But perfect.
Did
Yeah,
we
All
do
no, we're
right.
something
good.
with food last week when we said eat and we started that with eat, food? I think we did something on food last week.
I think we talked
I
about it a
We
little
talked
bit.
about it.
Hmm.
I'm dumping the gun then.
Hmm. No, you're totally good. No worries. So we'll go ahead and get started with our food signs tonight. The first sign we're going to do is the sign for food itself. And so when you are signing that, you're going to have kind of that flat O, and you're going to tap in front of your mouth. Food, food. Now, what's important here is you do want to double tap. So you tap it twice. Food, food. Okay. And so the reason for the double tap is this is showing can't talk already, the noun of being food itself. Okay. The reason is because then the sign for eat is one tap. So we have food, eat. Okay. So food is going to be two taps, eat is one tap. That is something that's we're gonna notice kind of similarly. It goes on with, for example, like chair and sit down. Chair is two taps, one tap is sit down. So most of the time, if you have the verb or action, it's gonna be that one-time motion. So like eating is the verb, so eat. And then the noun of that word, so food, is gonna be that two tap. Okay, so eat. Oops, food, eat. Sorry, everyone was joining in, and I was like, okay, wait a minute. I want to make sure I give it to everybody before we go ahead. So again, food is two taps, eat is one tap. Okay? All right. The next sign we're going to do is I do have this, we typically have this sectioned off by kind of like the categories of food. So the first one we're going to do is the sign for fruit. And so the sign for fruit is you're going to have an F, and you're going to put the pointer fingers at the corner of your mouth and bounce it a little. Fruit, 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 fruit. Okay. Then we're going to have the sign for apple. Apple is going to be an X, and you're going to put it similar in that corner of your mouth and go apple, apple, apple. Now, some people have asked if you wanted to talk about the specific types of apples, like the red or the green apples, you would just add the color. So red apple, green apple, things like that. Um, yeah, I was about to jump into real specific. I was like, most of the time we're not really always specific with our apples. There may be other foods we're specific with, but apples is typically red apples or green apples, or sour apples, which you can also add. We will get that one. All right. The next one is orange. Orange is going to be exactly the same as the color sign for orange. So orange, orange, orange. Sometimes signs will have the same word will have different signs for different meanings. So that's why I always like to say that this one is actually going to stay the same. Orange. Okay. Then we have strawberry. Strawberry is going to be a thumbs up, and you're going to have the pad of your thumb touch your chin. Strawberry. Strawberry. Again, lucky you guys got my fingers painted, like have my fingernails that are painted. So you can see, because this one, if you have it backwards like this is private. So you want to make sure you do stick your thumb the other way for strawberry, because that will make a difference. And actually, that reminds me, I want to add this because I always think it's always interesting and fun. So I think we've talked a little bit about how there are local signs and how each region will have different signs for different things. And one of my favorite ones to discuss is always strawberry, because here we typically sign strawberry, but I've also seen strawberry. Strawberry, I've seen strawberry, something like that. So many different variations of the sign for strawberry. And it's always just fun to see the like different ones and the different meanings. And this is the one I see most often here in like Alabama. But even when I was working a summer camp with high school students from different states all around. And when we would all come together for camp, one of the things we talked about was the sign for strawberry. And a lot of them were like strawberry, strawberry. And I was like, strawberry. Because I was like the only person, one of the only people in that little group from Alabama. I was the only one that had this one, and they're like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." So they would ask the other teachers and staff who were from Alabama, "What's your sign for strawberry?" And they would go, "Strawberry, strawberry." So it's always just
That's
fun to
so
see.
funny because I would think it would be apples because you think about like Granny Smith apples or Red Delicious apples. And like, I don't ask for a variety of strawberry. I just want strawberry.
Right? And
That's
they're all just
wild.
slightly different. It's fun to me. I don't know. I just love it. Whenever I see someone who's from a different state sign something different, I'm like, I try to before I ask them, I try to like observe and see what it could mean first, and then I'll ask them, "Hey, you said, do you mean strawberry?" And then if they're like, "Yes," I'm like, "Oh, I've not seen it before." Or I'm like, "Is that something else?" I have to ask, but it's always, I don't know, I just think it's fun. So, fun fact, strawberry has got a lot of different variations. Okay. Our next one is going to be grapes. And so the way you do grapes is you're going to have your hand, your non-dominant hand face down. And really, you can go either way, but you're going to have your hands tap on the hand, on your top. Your dominant hand is kind of the open five, slightly bent, and you're tapping. Okay. And it's like the bunches of grapes. So, like your non-dominant hand is the vines, while your dominant hand has the dots of grapes. So grapes. I've seen both grapes and grapes. I have seen kind of slight variations of that. So just, yeah. Okay. Let's see. We'll do the last three and then we'll go back through these. So then the next one we have is banana. So banana is you're gonna have your non-dominant pointer finger, and your dominant is gonna make the shape of peeling a banana. Banana. Sometimes they make so much sense, like this. Makes total sense and it's easy to figure out. Banana. The next one we have is peach. Peach is going to be peach, peach, peach. And if you think about it, it's like peach fuzz. So peach, peach. This is also the sign for experience. Like I've experienced that, I've not experienced that. Context clues will really help clarify when you're talking about peach as in the fruit versus experience something. Okay. And then, okay, my last two. Sorry, I always forget to add this one because I mean it is a fruit, but it's a tomato. But our last two fruit we have is lemon. So lemon's gonna be an L. You're gonna put your thumb kind of in that corner of your mouth again, and you're gonna go lemon. 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 Okay. And then our last fruit that we have is tomato. Okay. Now, this one I do think is also funny because Miss Katie is always so offended by this one. It's probably the most offensive one to her. And it's because the sign for tomato is technically got its two signs put together. So it doesn't have its own like individual sign. It is just two different signs put together.
I
So
am
what the sign
convinced that Jillian just does not like tomatoes and will not learn the sign.
No, I thought it was great because I actually don't like tomatoes. I'm not a tomato girl. And so when I learned this, I'm like, this fits because I don't like tomatoes. So it's just a whole thing. But what it is, and so tomato is going to be you sign the sign for red. So red. And then you're gonna have your non-dominant, this flat O again, and your pointer finger is gonna slice down. This is the sign for slicing. So it's red slices. It's basically what you're saying is a tomato. It's just red slices. Red slices.
I'm always going to defend the noble tomato.
I remember the first class when I showed her that, she was like, "Excuse me? It doesn't have its own." I was like, "Nope, nope, it's two put together." So offended. I think it's the funniest thing. Tomato sauce, you'd still would be as tomato, and then you would do the sign for sauce, which sauce is you have your palm up and you have a Y and you pour it. Some people have different variations of their sauce. This can also be used for syrup. Anything that you're really gonna pour that's like a liquid that you would pour on top of anything, um, is going to be this kind of motion. Sauce as well, even though sometimes we're not always pouring our sauce into things, it is still a liquid sauce thing. Excuse me. For lime, most of the time people will still sign this for lime as well. Usually I will finger spell lime with it. Like I'll do this and then go lime because it's so short. And they can be similar. Yes, I know they are different, but they can be similar to lemon. Um, I have just seen kind of both sign lemon and lime for this. Okay, let's go back to our beginning. Then we'll go through these fruits and then we'll move on to our next category. So we had the sign for food, which was food, food. Then we had the sign for eat, which was eat. Then we had fruit, fruit. Then we had apple, apple. Orange, orange. Strawberry, strawberry. Grapes. My list went sliding. Grapes. Mm-hmm. Banana, banana. Peach, peach. Lemon, lemon. And then tomato, tomato, tomato. So red, slice, slice, slice. Yep, tomato. You can do this is more like finish, but also like chopping. It's just because the one is already being used for that red, it transitions smoothly. Sometimes that'll actually, I've never talked about this before. I'm gonna mention this here. I think it's interesting. That's why I was like, I'm gonna drop this here. Because I brought up that made me think of it. When you are signing and you especially like with spelling, things like that, you will notice sometimes you're not signing always the exact 100% perfect way it should be signed. Um, because of the natural, I'm trying not to be all fancy, but the fluidness of the signs kind of will make it shift. For example, when you are spelling words, let's see. I'm trying to think. My name doesn't work. It doesn't count. Sometimes when you're talking about the ends, there will be ways where you're not signing exactly like Gillian. It's Jillian. Like if you notice, I'm Gillia, like, and then that weird, like like I have them at the same time for the Y, but it's that smooth motion. It goes in. Um, Man, I'm trying to think. There is one where when you finger spell, sometimes your N will not always you're not fully catching it, or there's certain letters that are not going to always go the full shape. And it's just because that smoothness will come through. So sometimes that happens similarly with the signs like red, slices, red. I think good morning can be one as well. If you notice it's that smooth, you don't have to go that full good morning. You could just go good morning, kind of smooths it out faster. Man, I was so ready to talk about it. And then the word that I thought of that was a perfect example literally dropped from my brain. And I was like, I don't know the word anymore that I can see where that letter's not always perfect. But if you pay attention, sometimes when people are spelling, you'll notice they may not fully sign the letters correctly. And it's not because they don't know how to sign it right. It's because how smooth the motion is that going that full like in or that full um, hand shape does not fit with the balance or the smooth, like how the word is going. That was very butchered. I'm very mad about how well I was so excited. And then it was like, and I was like, never mind. But if I think of a word that makes me think of it, I will show you what I'm talking about. I promise. I just don't know why that word went away. Okay. So let's now go on to our vegetables. All right. So for vegetable, you're going to have a V and you're going to go vegetable. So you have the pointer finger and then your middle finger. Vegetable, vegetable, vegetable. Back and forth, vegetable. And you tap on your chin. Sorry, I realized I didn't say that. You do tap on your chin, that corner of your mouth again, vegetable. Okay? Now, our first one we have is the sign for corn. I've seen two different ways for this. One of them is very similar to what we've already kind of probably would suspect how you would show a sign or emotion for corn. And it is you're going to have like your little C's and you're going to go corn, corn. So it's like you have it on the cob and you're eating the corn on the cob. The other one is you're going to have your pointer finger, and I'm going to show you the motion because it is hard to describe, and it's corn, corn. So it's like you start your hand away and it's twisting, like you're eating the cob again, corn, corn. And I'm sliding it across my mouth, corn. So like I'm keeping it and it's continuing to like, it's like this similar kind of motion, but I twist it. It's very weird. Corn. So like I'm not really turning it like this. I'm keeping my hand, I'm just twisting it as I go. Like my wrist is twisting. This motion, corn, 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 corn. Okay. And this one, I think a lot of people will tend to not always use as much, especially when you're learning, is because it can look very similar to like brushing your teeth. So it can get confusing. So either one works though. Corn and corn both work. So kind of your choice. All right. And the next one we have is potato, which is one of my favorite things in the world. I love me some potatoes. All right. So the first sign we're going to do is the sign for potato itself. You're going to have your non-dominant fist. Your dominant is going to be in a V. You bend it, and then you tap on top of the back of your hand. Potato, 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 potato. Now, this is also the sign for potato chips. Okay? Potato chips. So I've gotten this question before. How would you differentiate between if you're talking about actual potatoes versus potato chips? And the way you would do it is really context clues will kind of help clarify it. But if all else fails, you can just do potato and then finger spell chips. Chips. Because that is a fast, like you can finger spell it pretty fast. Okay. Um, but most of the time, like, if you're talking about having a steak, most of the time people are not having chips with their steak. It's potatoes, that kind of thing. Or if you're having hot dogs, you may have potato chips. I know there's potato salad. Someone pointed that out in one class when I said, yeah, you have chips with your hot dogs. They're like, potato salad? And I was like, okay, but that would be still like potato, and then you would do like salad, or you would describe it, and that would make it better sense than still having to get confused. So context clues do help with that. All right. The next one we're going to do is going to be our sweet potato. I'm going to add this here because we have one between, but I'm going to move it ahead. So for sweet potato, you're going to just add the sign for sweet. And so the sign for sweet is sweet. 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 So sweet potato. Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes. Okay. Then the next one we're going to have is French fries. And so for French fries, you're going to have an F and you're going to tap it. French fries. French fries. And it's like you're making the motion of getting a French fry and dipping it in your ketchup. That's the visual I think of it. French fries. French fries. I know that's not really technically a vegetable, but it's a potato, so it counts. All right, the next one we have is the sign for cabbage or lettuce. They do have their same sign. Some people I have seen where they will add the letter to it, but I will show you both. But this one's the first one I show you is the one I see most often. Okay. And you're gonna have it's like your C, but very flat. So like spread out and everything. Okay. And the base of your palm is gonna carefully pat yourself on the side of the head. Lettuce, lettuce. And the visual and the reasoning with this one is like a head of lettuce. So it's like, if you think about it, it's like these are the leaves of the lettuce. You have to peel it out and stuff like that kind of deal. Lettuce, lettuce. Cabbage, same way. I have seen someone do where they did for lettuce, they did the L and went lettuce, lettuce. That can be a little bit confusing because sometimes people also do this for listen, like listen. So I typically more with that flat hand lettuce. But in case you see this, that could mean they are talking about the actual sign for like talking about lettuce. So lettuce. Excuse me. Okay. Let's do, where is that one? We'll do one more vegetable, stop, go back, and then move on to our next topic. Okay. So the next sign we're going to do is the sign for pickle. Okay. So the sign for pickle is going to be a P. You're going to turn it back up, and your middle finger is going to go in that corner of your mouth again, and you're going to go pickle. Bounce it back and forth. Pickle. 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 Okay. All right. Let's go back. So we had our vegetable. My list needs to stop zooming out. Vegetable, vegetable, vegetable. Then we have corn, 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 or corn. We have potato, potato. Sweet potato, sweet potato. We had our cabbage. Wait, no, we had French fries. Sorry, skipping French fries. French fries. French fries. Then we had our cabbage slash lettuce. Cabbage. Cabbage. And then we had our pickle. Pickle. If you remember, it's the P and it's the middle finger. Pickle. Pickle. Okay. So now what we're going to move on to is we're actually going to move on to some description of foods. So things like sour, spicy, sweet. We already did sweet, obviously. Cold, hot, those sort of things. Okay. So the first one we have is the sign for sour slash tart. And it's going to be a pointer finger. And you're going to be right here in the corner of your mouth again. You're going to go sour. Sour. Now, it is important when you do this, you do want to like purse your lips. Like when you eat, like I always think about if you eat like one of those lemon heads, or when you eat a sour piece of sour candy and your lips like, ooh, you kind of like purse it. Yeah, sour, sour, sour. No, exactly. That was the next one. So the reason you want to make sure you purse your lips is because this is also the sign for candy. Candy. So that's why that purse will show, ooh, it's a sour. Like you're talking about a pickle being sour, versus candy, a piece of candy. I sometimes, when I like to really emphasize, I like to add a nice little smile with my candy because candy is great and amazing. And sometimes sour things are not fun. That's me though, and that's me being an elementary teacher. So if you were gonna do sour
Candy
candy,
is great and amazing.
yes, it is. Oh my gosh, yes.
No,
Perfect
it is.
example.
That's just so funny.
There's always someone that asks this question every class. What about sour candy? When you're talking about sour candy, you pretty much, I like to go candy and then go sour. Like I try to emphasize, like I'm talking about candy being sour. Whoo. Like I like candy that's sour. So I start with the sign candy so they know what general I'm talking about and then being sour. That's how I sign sour candy. But yeah, it's an interesting when you have to like kind of add that facial expression to really help separate the same sign. Okay. The next one we have is spicy. So for spicy, you're gonna have your like hand kind of that flat bend again. You're gonna have it facing away from you, and you're going to wiggle your fingers back and forth from your mouth. And the visual is flames kind of coming towards your mouth. Spicy. Spicy. It's spicy. Okay. So I'm wiggling my fingers back and forth like this as I move it away. Spicy. Spicy. And you want to, and the reason you do it this way is because if you go this way, this is the sign for dragon, is when you have it kind of when the flames are coming out of your mouth. So like I've been trying to figure out how to best describe it. And I'm like, as we've gone on with these classes, I'm like, yeah, the flames are coming in your mouth because your mouth is on fire, it burns, versus being a dragon and the flames coming out of your mouth. So that's my visual with that. All right. Our next sign is the sign for cold. Okay. So cold, this can be talking about the food tastes cold. It can also be talking about the weather being cold, you feeling cold, anything like that. Okay. The only thing that it won't sign for is saying you have a cold, like when you're sick. That would be different. So the sign is cold. It's two S's and you shake out cold. Ooh, cold. Cold, cold. Okay. Another way you can describe your food is also saying it's frozen. Because if you think about it, sometimes we'll be like, well, the food is frozen, it's cold. And so the sign for frozen, frozen, freeze, froze, is you have two fives, they're flat, and then you pull them back and bend your fingers. Freeze, freeze, freeze. Freeze. Okay. The next sign we have is the sign for hot. This is not the spicy hot. This is talking about it's really like burning your mouth, not spicy wise, but it's just too hot. And so for hot, it's an open, it's hard to describe this shape because it's almost like an open C again, but spread out. Or have it in front of your mouth, and you're gonna go hot, 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 hot. Hot. This can also mean when you're talking about it's hot outside. Outside, it is hot. Okay. The only one this really wouldn't be the most clear with is when you're talking about something being, ooh, that's spicy hot. This you would rather do the spicy. Okay. All right. Let's go back through those and then we're gonna go on to more of our entree main courses kind of deal. So we had our sour slash tart. Sour. 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 Then we had our candy. Candy. I love seeing the people who are like, I'm gonna smile when I have the candy. Candy. I love it. Then we had spicy, spicy, spicy. We then had our cold, cold, cold. We had our frozen, frozen, frozen. And then our hot, 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 hot. Okay. So now we get to go into the real fun part when we talk about our entrees. All right. The first one we do is the signs for pizza. There are two ways you can sign pizza that I've seen often. The first one is the most common one I see, and it is you almost are like holding a slice of pizza. So if you notice, my hand is it's so hard to describe. It's like I'm holding a slice and I bring it to my mouth. Pizza, 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 pizza. Okay. The other one I've seen is you have a V, you bend it to where it's like two X's, okay? And you go pizza. You make a Z. Pizza, 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 pizza. I learned this one first, the zigzag Z pizza, but then changed to this because this is what I started to see more often. It's always fun when you slightly shift your ways and you're like, wait a minute, I've not used that one before. I always did this one. Now it's changed to this pizza. Okay. Then we have salad. So salad is going to be, you have two bent C's again, and you go salad. And you do bring your fingers together. And it's like if you think about like, at Olive Garden, they used to like way back in the days where they would mix your salad in front of you and they would get like the prongs and they would do that. It's that motion, salad, salad, salad. Okay. Then we have hamburger. Hamburger is going to be hamburger. So it's like you're making the patties. Hamburger, hamburger. Okay, hamburger. For a cheeseburger, you will just add the sign cheese to it. So the sign for cheese is going to have your non-dominant sideways. Your dominant is going to slightly bend a bit, and you're going to go cheese. Cheese. Okay, cheese. So cheeseburger. cheeseburger. I realized my fingers were not as spread out the first time. Sorry. You do kind of spread them out a bit more. Cheeseburger, cheeseburger. Okay. Then we have fish. For fish, there is not really a lot of different signs for different types of fish. Meaning when you're talking about if you had tilapia or I always forget some every time. Swordfish, things like that, you would finger spell. Catfish, yeah. Don't do catfish, they'll get confused. We tease at school all the time about catfish, and they're like, no. But really, you would just sign the sign for fish and then finger spell if you're talking about a specific. So the sign for fish, there are two ways I've seen it. Honestly, it's just a slight change. The first one is fish. So you have your non-dominant tapping at the base of your dominant, and then you just wiggle your fingers back and forth. It's almost like the tail. Fish, fish, fish. The other one I've seen is just a pointer finger. Instead of the four fingers, it's the pointer finger. Fish, fish, fish. So fish or fish. And this would not be fishing. Fishing would just be making the motion of fishing. Fishing, fishing. So I always like to add that there to clarify that. So if you're talking about a specific type of fish, you'd will finger spell. So you'd go fish and then be like tilapia, tilapia. I went way too fast that first time and I knew I missed some letters. I looked and I went, I did not spell all of that. So our next one is going to be spaghetti slash pasta. It is the same sign. You again would finger spell if you really want to emphasize the difference. Okay. So the sign is going to be two pinkies. You're going to start them together and you're going to spiral out. Pasta, spaghetti. Okay. I've noticed that when signing this, typically when you're talking about what you had for dinner, that I most of the time will see when someone says this, I think of spaghetti first. And if anyone was talking about having a different type of pasta and then starts describing it, they usually will add more descriptions to clarify it's not actually like spaghetti itself. Context clues do really play a lot, especially when you're talking about food. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and add this here before I forget. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was gonna add the three main important I think we should know. We're actually gonna start reverse. We're gonna start with dinner and go lunch, breakfast. I'll explain why later. So the first one is gonna be dinner. Dinner is gonna be a D, and you're gonna bring it to your mouth. Dinner, 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 dinner. Okay. The next one is lunch. Lunch is going to be that L, and you're going to go lunch. So your thumb comes to your chin, lunch. Okay. So most people assume because of that, that B would be here. No, 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 no. We have to be careful with that one. So that's why I like to go reverse because these two are similar. This one is slightly different. Some people do sign breakfast. Breakfast. You want to be careful with that for a couple of reasons. First one being is that this is also the sign for beer. Okay? Yeah, so beer. So you want to be careful because if you're talking about what you had for breakfast and then they think you're talking about a beer, that very easily can be confusing. The other one is this is also, if you go too similar like this is not a nice word. Okay, I think you guys can figure out with this letter what word you are saying. It is not a nice word. Okay, so you have to be careful. So what we tend to do, and what I've seen, is say morning food. Breakfast is morning food. You don't have to go big morning food. You can just kind of do a little morning food. Morning food. Morning food. Okay, that's typically what we do. Sometimes, especially with our kids who are younger, they may kind of with that be to help learn that hand shape of like that this is going, talking about breakfast, but I would be careful. So just a little tidbit. I typically go morning food anyways. I think that's just on the safer side of teaching. So, but yeah. All right. Let's see. let's go back to our entrees and then we'll talk about we'll do a little bit of breakfast food. There's like three things I have for that. Then we'll get on to our desserts. Okay. So we had our pizza. So we had pizza, or pizza. We had our salad, hmm salad. Then we had our hamburger. We had our cheese, cheeseburger. Ooh, cheeseburger. We had our fish or fish. hmm We had spaghetti, pasta. Then we had our dinner, dinner. And then lunch, and then our breakfast, morning food. Morning food. Okay. All right. So I have a few things for breakfast, not much. The first one I have is the sign for egg. And so the sign for egg is going to be two H's. You're going to put one of the H's on top of the other. Typically, this is my dominant hand. And you're going to go egg, egg. So it's like you're cracking the egg, 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 egg. This would be when you're talking about having eggs for breakfast, and also ducks have eggs. It's both the same sign. Okay, so egg. The next one we have is then bacon. And so for bacon, we're going to have those same shape, those two H's. You're going to turn them on their side, bring them together, and then you're going to do zigzags up and down. Bacon, bacon. And it's like the ridges of the bacon when you're cooking. Bacon, bacon. Okay, bacon. The next one we have is bread. And so for bread, you're going to have, it's similar to that slicing again. Okay. And this time you're going, whoops, I don't know why I was doing that. My brain was not there. You have your non-dominant, that B, your dominant hand is that bent shape again, and you're going to slice the front of your hands. Bread, 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 bread. Okay. It's interesting. I've recently saw a sign for toast. I typically always fingerspell toast, but I saw toast. Toast, so it's like a V, and you have it like tap the palm of your hand and then tap the back. Toast. That was a new one I haven't really seen. I always fingerspell toast. So that was nice to see a new one for that toast. Okay. So let's go on to our desserts. So the sign for dessert is going to be two D's. You're gonna have them sideways and then they tap. And you want to make sure you have them sideways because if you have them pointing up like this is dating, like date. So sideways is dessert. Okay, dessert. The first thing we have is chocolate. And so the sign for chocolate is going to be your non-dominant is a fist, your dominant is a C, and you're going to circle the C on top of the back of your hand. Okay, so you circle it, chocolate. You do not want to tap it. Tapping is church. Okay, so chocolate, church. Always like to add that because those can be very different things and can be very confusing. If you're talking about how you ate a bunch of chocolate last night and they said you ate church, excuse me, what? I could see that being a very confusing conversation. Okay. The next sign we have is the sign for vanilla. Vanilla is going to be the same as our chocolate, except it's a V. Vanilla. So you're going to put like kind of where your thumb rests on top of your hand. Vanilla. Okay. Vanilla. Vanilla. Okay. So for this, most of the time when we talk about chocolate and vanilla, we talk about ice cream. So the sign for ice cream is it's an S and you go ice cream. Ice cream. So it's like you're eating an ice cream cone. Ice cream. Ice cream. Okay. The next one we have is the sign for cake. I have seen many different ways you can sign the sign for cake. I've seen some people where they have slight variations of how they sign cake, especially if they're talking about a cupcake versus actual cake. I've seen a bunch of different ways. So I'm going to show you a few of them, all right? The first one I have is the sign for cake is your non-dominant is palm up. Your dominant is going to be in this slightly spread out C, and you go cake, cake, cake. All right, so cake. The other one is going to be that same shape again, but now you have a full C and you slide it. Cake, cake, cake. And you want to have like your pinky, the flat side, slide across. Cake, cake, cake. So cake. And then the other one is also is just finger spelling cake, cake itself. The reason that one comes into play, for example, I typically do this for cupcake. I will say this is cupcake because it looks more like a shape of a cupcake. And then I would finger spell cake. I have started to sign cake this more because I have seen it more, but I used to just do cupcake and then cake because it's such a short 4-letter word. Okay. The next one we have is pie. And so pie is going to be palm up, and you're going to make a triangular slice on your hand. So pie, 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 pie. Okay. So pie. All right. And then the last dessert I have is cookie. And so for cookie, you're going to have a tiny C. I usually use like, when I call a tiny C, it's just one finger instead of like the full C, it's a tiny one. And you're going to bring it to your mouth. Cookie, cookie, cookie. I have seen some people also say this for cookie as well. I have seen this as well. I'm just throwing that out there just in case if someone's like, I was talking about a cookie. I have seen this as well for cookie sometimes. Not as much as this one though. I do see this one more often. Cookie. Okay. And then let's move on to our drinks. We have just a few drinks, not many. And then let's see, I'm trying to check and make sure. We'll do some phrases and then I'll leave it open for you guys, okay? So for our drinks, the first one we're gonna do is the sign for water because I think that one is a very important one. And so for water, you're gonna have a W and you're gonna have your pointer finger tap the corner of your mouth. Water, water, water. This is also talking about any body of water. So when you're talking about like the ocean or things like that, you typically will do water and then add like waves to it. So you do see this one also just talking about the generalized self water and not just like drinking water. It applies to both. So water, then we have tea. So for tea, you're going to have your non-dominant kind of in this C shape again. Your dominant is going to be in that F, and you're going to circle. I almost said spin. You're going to circle it. And it's like you have the tea bag and you're circling it. Tea. Okay, tea. You don't want to tap it because when you dip it like this, that means vote. So that's why we do the circle motion. Tea. Okay. The next one we have is coffee. So coffee is going to be 2 S's. You're going to turn them sideways, put the S's on top, and then spin the top hand, like go in a circle. Coffee. Okay, coffee. And if you are a person who likes iced coffee, you can do that same sign, frozen, freeze coffee, iced coffee. Iced coffee. I thought I would add that here. All right. Our last drink sign is the sign for soda. And so the sign for soda is going to be, you're going to have again that sort of like OC shape, and you're going to have your middle finger pretend like it flips the tab open. So, and then you bring it up and slam down. Soda. Soda. It's a very interesting one. So it's like you pull it open and slam. Soda. 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 Now, this is a generalized sign for soda, okay? When you're talking about specific kinds of soda, like Coke, Sprite, all the others, typically you would finger spell them. Most of them are not too long on the type of sodas you're talking about. So, like Coke is always just, CE, and then if it's zero, it's like you shake the zero like it's nothing. And then Sprite is very fast. Sometimes, and I'm adding this here just in case if you ever run across maybe a deaf child who signs this, because I typically do see this more with our kids. Obviously, I do teach kids. So, some will do and then go S. They'll add like that S to it. That is not really the official like sign for Sprite, but they're just saying like it's the soda, the S one. It's S soda meaning Sprite. Sometimes I've also seen them where they color it. They'll say the green soda, meaning again Sprite, versus the red soda, which is Coke. I think it's funny because I know there's a lot of different sodas that have the color red on it. And so, but that's like the generalized most common you would see is for Coke is red. Um, those are just different ways to help kind of describe and clarify what kind of soda they're talking about, but it's not like the official sign for it. Okay. So I just want to give you guys that there. Let's come to here. I see you had put this and I was like, I saw it, I promise. But I was like, I want to finish the drinks. The sign for watermelon. Very interesting one. We didn't add pumpkin. I'm sorry. That has bothered me for so long, and I've never realized until just now. I know that is so random. I know you're like, how did we go from watermelon to pumpkin? I
We
promise.
do have
Makes sense.
pumpkin and Halloween signs, though. I
I
will
think
say
that's
that.
why. Oh my gosh. Okay. Because I was sitting here going, what do I keep thinking about? Every time I think about pie, I always think there's another sign. It's because I'm thinking of pumpkin pie. Oh my goodness. Anyways. Okay. The reason I thought of it was because the sign for watermelon is water and then the sign for pumpkin. Okay, that's why. So the sign for pumpkin is your non-dominant fist again, and you're going to flick it. Okay, this is pumpkin. Pumpkin. Okay. So you have like that eight shape again, and you flick it. Pumpkin. So for watermelon, I've seen people go water pumpkin. So water pumpkin. Yeah, I know. When you take it at its base tones of what you're signing, it's water pumpkin. So watermelon. Watermelon. I have seen that. I think that's I'm wow. I'm sorry. I'm so wowed right now that we've not added pumpkin. I don't know why that's haunted me. Like, I think it's because it's just fall and it's Halloween season, and yet but I'm like, and I get that we have it in our holiday events, but I'm like, why is it not in our regular common routine thing? I
But
guess
we
because,
don't eat pumpkin all the time.
I mean, you're not wrong, but like, it's sugar.
We could
It's
start eating
sugar.
pumpkin if that would help.
Yes, more of us eat pumpkin, so then it becomes important. Cantaloupe and honeydew, you do finger spell. Cantaloupe and honeydew. I will see some people, I've seen people do this. Um, and I'm saying this now only that way so you are aware if you do see it. Some people will do a sign for part of that word and then finger spell the rest. Does not mean it's the sign. Some people are like, yeah, no, it's fine, it's not a big deal. Others are like, oh no, you do not do that. And so the reason I was going to say this is because some people will do the sign for honey. So the sign for honey is you have the two fingers together, and you go in a circular motion on your chin. Honey. Honey. So honey. Sometimes they'll just do it with the H, fully H. Honey, like kind of up and down. Honey do. Honey do. Um, If it's not a big deal, it's not a big deal. But also, like, if you take it in its very literal terms, you're talking about something being like having honey, like actual honey, and then do like it's stripping. So that's where it gets to be like you're not talking about the actual fruit honeydew, you're talking about honey and then dew. That's where it gets the confusing part. So, that did make me think I wanted to add these here that we didn't do is the sign for butter and the sign for meat. So the sign for butter is going to be your non-dominant palm up again. Butter is going to be that same shape as we did like our honey, similar. And you're going to brush it on the base of your palm. So honey, butter, my goodness, butter, goodness, butter, okay, butter. And you do want to make sure you have at least the two fingers. You don't want to go full. This is soap. When you have all the fingers, this is soap. So two is talking about butter, butter, okay? And then the last one we have is the sign for meat, all right? The sign for meat is going to have your non-dominant again sideways like this. Your dominant is going to be again that sort of H shape. And then you're going to hook onto your meat. The very literalness of this is looking like a piece of meat hanging in like a butcher shop. Meat. Okay, meat. This is typically used when you're talking about having any kind of just steak, things like that. Most of the time I guess I do see this mostly when we're talking about steak, because if you're talking about having a hamburger patty, you would talk about hamburger. Like hamburger steak is like hamburger steak. You just do hamburger meat. Uh, Chicken, you sign the sign for chicken, which the sign for chicken, we will see this next week when we do our animals, but I'll go ahead with this one. It's going to be the sign for 20, but in front of your nose. Chicken, chicken, chicken. So if you're talking about you ate chicken for dinner, it'd be just chicken. Um, Pork chop. Okay. So for pork chop, you can fingerspell pork chop. Sometimes, usually we do fingerspell pork chop. You can add the sign for pig. It's very blunt. I have to preface this because it is very blunt. When you're talking about the types of meats, we have slightly like nicer words when we're talking about it. Pork chops, bacon, ham, things like that. But at the end of the day, it is still a pig. And so I know it's very blunt, okay? I mean, it is very blunt. But so when you're talking about the types of like pork chops and hams, you can just go with the sign for pig. And so the sign for pig is you have the back of your dominant hand going under your chin and you go pig, pig, okay, pig. So when you talk about pork chops, you can always fingerspell like pig and then chops, or like talk about just generalize. I know, trust me, the first time I taught this and Miss Katie saw it, she was, I mean, floored. Her jaw was on the ground like, because she was so shocked. I was like, yeah, it's very direct. So, and trust me, it also shocks the kids because the kids will not realize, like, when they're talking about, like, when they talk about hamburger, that it's cow meat. They don't realize that. And it's always an interesting conversation when you have to say, yeah, hamburger is cow. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, floors them every time. I've had that conversation multiple times because they'll ask about the meat. They're like, I had one kid one time say, I don't like meat. I don't eat meat. I don't eat meat. And I was like, while they were eating a hamburger. And I was like, sweetie, that's meat. And they're like, no, it's a hamburger. And I said, yeah, hamburger includes meat. And they're like, what kind? I said, cow. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's a thing. And yeah, it's a whole, I like I laugh about it because it's so bad. Like, you know what I mean? Where you're just like, oh my gosh, no, this is terrible. Like, I hate that I'm like, like, this is what I'm teaching you. Like, this is what you had to figure out just now. But it's an interesting conversation. But yeah, so when you're talking about beef, you can fingerspell beef, or you can do cow meat, which is very direct. And I want to do that. Typically, people go with beef because that one's an easier one to do. Um, But yeah, it's very blunt. Very blunt. So yeah. Okay. Let's real quick add a few sentences I did want to add here. Because I think these are important. And then if we have time, I'll leave it open. All right. So the first time we're going to do is the sign for my favorite food. What it like my favorite food is the English. And so the way you would do it is you would go favorite food. We go my favorite food, and then you would sign it. Okay, sorry, I'm having hiccups. So the sign is my. Okay. Then the sign for favorite is going to be your middle finger, and you're going to tap your chin. If you remember when we did birthday last week, it's similar to birthday, except you're not going to your chest now. You're just tapping your chin. Favorite. Favorite. Okay. So my favorite food. Okay. And then some people, the way they like to have their sentences when they're saying, when they're mentioning this, is they'll typically go, my favorite food, what? Hamburgers. It's almost like showing you like this is the question, what? It's hamburger. Um, that is always to help kind of clarify because sometimes when you're asking things, and if you're saying my favorite food, like or what your favorite food, what? They would say like my favorite food hamburger or my favorite food what hamburger. I cannot sign and talk at the same time. My brain's flipping. Sorry. My favorite food what hamburger. Okay. All right. The next one is the sign for allergic. Okay. So the sign for allergic is also the same sign for allergies. And it's going to be kind of near your nose. You have two pointer fingers near your nose, and you're going to go allergic. Allergic. So you like pull them away. I typically have this one closer to my face, like it just comes down the side, while this one pulls away. Allergic, allergic, allergic. Some people also just kind of keep it allergic in the more middle. Either way, I've not seen it be too big of a difference. Allergic, allergic. Mhm. So they start together and then they go back. The reason is because it's similar to the sign for opposite. Okay. And that's where it's showing is like, I can't eat that. Like I can do the opposite. If I eat it, I get sick. So allergic. It does. And I think it's because it's like, or at least your nose, like your face reacts like your nose sometimes, things like that. Like it just kind of comes interesting like that. See, if your nose is running though, your nose is running. I just thought I'd add it here. So that's like, this is a runny nose, which I think is very visual. You are not going to misunderstand that this is talking about your nose is dripping something. So, little fun fact, just had to add that there. All right, our next one is like and don't like. Okay, very similar. So the sign for like is you're going to have your middle and your thumb tapping your chest and you're going to pull them together. So you're going to pull them away as you pull them together, like, like. So the shape I'm doing is like it's open like this and I'm closing them. Like, like, like. For don't like, there are two ways you can do it. The first one is similar to like, you pull it like this and then you throw it away. Don't like, don't like, don't like. And you have to have like I'm not amused. This is not my kind of food. I don't like that. Don't like. You don't have to look horrified, but you have to be like, you don't want to be like, I don't like that. I don't like. Again, they're gonna think you're being very sarcastic. They're not gonna like, they're gonna be like, are you being serious? Are you faking? What you doing? So you want to show them, I don't like that. Don't like. Okay. The other way you can do it is you can add the sign for not. Not. So it's a thumb under your chin. Not. Not. Not like. Not like. Okay. Not is kind of an important one because this is our um negative word. And the reason I say that, I hate using that, but like whenever we have anything that's saying it's undecided, unofficial, whatever, any of the things that we have that this is where that comes in. This is going to be the okay? Like undecided is not decided. Unofficial is not official. Things like that, okay? So this one's a good one to know, okay? The next one we have is need. And so for need, you're going to have an X and you're going to tap it. Need. Okay? Need. For don't need, you just add the not need. Don't need. Don't need. Don't need. Okay. I know it's 6:30. Let me give you just these last two and I promise I'll let you go. Okay. The last two I wanted to do was want. Okay. So when you're talking about you want something, you have your open fives away from you. And it's like we did with our frozen, you're going to bring them and close your fingers. Want, want. Okay? Want, want. If you don't want something, obviously you can do not want. The other way is want, throw it down. Want, throw it down. Like, I don't want that. I don't want it. Don't want. Don't want. Okay? All right. Our last two. I know I said two, but I realize it's technically two together. Is more and less. And then I promise I'm done. I promise. Okay. So the sign for more is going to be two O's, and you're going to go more, more, and you tap them more. You probably have seen sometimes babies, when they're learning, when they're still learning, they learn more, more, and then less is going to be your non-dominant palm up, your dominant kind of up here, and you're going to bring it down. Less. Less. Or you can still do like it's tiny, like small, just little, less, tiny, small, things like that. Okay? Okay. I know it's over time. Is there any clarifications you need, anything like that? I know we didn't get to go through those again. French cuisine. Okay, so you basically the way you would say it is French food. And so the sign for French is going to be an F and you
Mhm.
turn it.
Mhm.
French. French. This is also France. They are the same sign. So French food.
That is a very cha-cha sign. So that's going to be easy to remember.
Oh yeah. French food. French cuisine, French food. Yes. Any final things you guys have? Any questions? Anything like that? If you have to go, you totally do not have to stay. I know we're over time. But if you have questions, I want to leave it open still.
Okay, I wanted to say one thing.
Hmm.
I think that something is messed up with my videos. So, before everybody joined, we were discussing, and I think a couple of people had gotten links to the ABC video a couple of times. I'm not sure what's going on, but tomorrow I'm gonna look into this when I get to work. At the very least, I will send y'all the links to the YouTube channel where you can just go straight to the content. But I'll figure something out.
Hey, Katie, I think they're mislabeled because it says fall of 2024, class 4, whatever, but
Uh-huh.
it takes you back to 1. There is a there is a link somewhere in there which is redirecting you back to the old one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to go back in and undo
Little
some
that I know,
things.
but I'm just saying that it's because I am following Jillian on YouTube. Like that's why I jumped the gun today. I said, I've seen this already. Why am I doing this again? I've already seen most of her videos. I'm like one class ahead of what she's doing. And this I said, wait, she just did this last week. That was me.
I think Zoom has updated itself and it's changed a few things without telling people it's changed a few things too. And so it's like,
Yeah, we hadn't had a class since like May, April, May.
I think it's
So it had been
springtime
like 6 months, and yeah, Zoom is it's
or
not gonna stay the same yet. But I'm gonna get
Mhm.
it worked out. I'm gonna get it worked out.
I'm gonna add this one because I saw it. I did see it, Lizzie. I saw it and I was like, oh no, we're talking. Taco is gonna be so you have your non-dominant in this like open hand. Your dominant, it's like in a B, and you're gonna stick your feet, your food in there. Taco. Taco. And if you think about it, it's like the layers, the beef, the lettuce, the cheese, tomatoes, whatever you have, taco. Taco. Okay. If you think of any other food signs you're curious of, you can save them for next week, and we can kind of come back on that. If not, next week should be animals, which is
Hmm.
always fun. And that one's a bit content heavy as well, kind of like tonight, where there's a lot of signs. So, but think of any animals you're curious of. We always like to have more on our list. We always kind of start basic. That way you have more, we can add. But yeah. I guess I think we're good for now. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of y'all's week, and I will see you guys all next Tuesday. Bye, guys.